is Jillian Gregory. I'm a Divisional Director for Teaching and Learning. The Florida Standards Assessment, the FSA, will be administered beginning in March, April, and May, followed by FSA end-of-course exams in algebra and geometry. Additionally, end-of-course exams associated with biology, civics, and U.S. history will also be administered in April and May. The district would like to share some important procedures to assure that all students are tested in the proper standardized manner. This video should be viewed by all test administrators and proctors associated with these tests. In general, all Florida public school students must be administered the FSA appropriate for their grade, subject in which they are receiving instruction, and the appropriate end-of-course assessments. There are a limited number of students whose educational plan indicate they should take the Florida Standards Alternate Assessment or Access 2.0 for ELLs instead of FSA Reading. Your school test coordinator is organizing these assessments for those appropriate students. Here are some important facts about this year's tests. As you can see on the calendar, this year's FSA begins on Monday, March 28th for elementary and Monday, April 11th for middle schools and high schools. FSA testing in ELA and math continue until Friday, May 7th. Retake tests for those students who have not yet passed the FCAT are offered at our high schools between March 28th and April 8th. The high school test coordinators are arranging these retake test administrations. The daily session schedule may differ at each school. The sessions and times have been distributed to your school test coordinator. Please make sure you have a copy of your school's daily FSA schedule, the end-of-course assessment schedule, and the EOCs that are associated with U.S. History, Biology 1, Algebra, Geometry, and Civics. All students finishing those courses during this school year should take the appropriate tests. The FSA reading test is administered as a computer-based exam for grades 4 through 10. Fourth grade is the newest computer-based testing area for reading. In addition, mathematics students in grades 5 through 8 and all end-of-course assessments are also computer-based. Some students with IEPs have accommodations indicating that a computer-based test is not an appropriate type of assessment. These students take the FSA in accordance with any identified accommodations on their IEP. There are specific policies and procedures for these types of tests. Despite the administration of a paper-based test for these students, more information can be found in the FSA Computer-Based Test Administration Manual. Your school test coordinator will distribute these manuals to the appropriate personnel if he or she has not already done so. Each school must schedule computer-based tests so there are sufficient computers for all students to complete the FSA and end-of-course assessments within each administration window. Students are required to read and sign a testing rule acknowledgement prior to taking each test. It is important to note that should a student refuse to sign this document, this does not excuse the student from taking the test. While students may not share information about secure test content after testing, this policy is not intended to prevent students from discussing their testing experiences with their parents and families. As a reminder for our veteran test administrators and for those new to administering the state assessments, you may not discuss or communicate any information about the test items with anyone before, during, or after testing. This ban includes communicating any type of electronic communication, such as texting, email, or posting anything on social media or online. This year, students who are taking the paper-based tests will be required to complete a practice test. These paper-based practice tests are meant to familiarize test administrators and students with the item types and formatting on these paper-based tests. Everyone involved in administering the FSA or handling FSA materials must carefully read the FSA Administration and Security Agreement, which emphasizes the importance of proper training and possible consequences of test administration irregularities. In addition, test administrators must sign a Test Administrator Prohibited Activities Agreement, indicating they understand prohibited activities. These documents should be signed and forwarded to the school test coordinator. All test administrators must be certified educators unless special permission has been approved and documented by the district testing office. As I mentioned, the FSA schedule varies by grade and test, but all Leon County schools should begin administration on the schedule that has been approved for your school. The daily FSA schedule should be adhered to. Computer-based tests, including end-of-course assessments, must be administered within the appropriate windows. Test administrators must allow the exact amount of time allotted for each assessment. That amount of time can be found in a handout your school test coordinator received from the district. A session may not be ended early, even if all students have indicated they have finished. When a break is provided in the schedule, it is only to be a stand and stretch break, with no interaction between students. During this break, student tests and answer books should be closed. If students need to use the restroom during the test, only one student of each gender may be allowed at a time. These students do not receive additional time to complete for the test session. Please note, although the end-of-course assessments are timed, students may have additional time if they feel they need it. It is expected that all test administrators will review the 2016 FSA Test Administration Manual for the appropriate subject and grade prior to the day of testing. The days of the test are very busy. Some might even say a little hectic. That is no time to be seeing the directions for the first time. If you are a test administrator of ESC or ELL students, it is especially important that you are aware of the proper test accommodations for each student. These accommodations can be found in a student's IEP or LEP plan. All allowable accommodations must be offered to the student. No additional accommodations may be given. If a student is in a grade that is computer-based testing and needs the accommodation of a paper and pencil administration, that accommodation has been noted on the student's IEP. As a test administrator, if you have any questions or concerns about an IEP student's accommodations, please contact your school's testing coordinator. It is also important that a student has had experience with the accommodations during his or her normal classroom instructional activities. No additional accommodations may be allowed. Each test site should be free of distractions, have comfortable seating, sufficient workspace, and good lighting and ventilation. Students should not be facing each other when at a table and should not be able to easily view each other's answers. Students should be seated at least 3 feet apart. If there is any concern, physical barriers should be placed between students. Use of physical barriers may be of particular importance during the administration of computer-based tests. In addition, prior to the test, administrators should remove all or cover all visual aids displayed in the room. Let's discuss test administrator activities during the FSA. The most important things to remember during the FSA is to read the appropriate FSA script verbatim and to provide adequate proctoring of the exam. This is best accomplished by circulating through the room during the test to ensure the proper testing procedures are being followed. The administration manual states that it is not appropriate for test administrators to use phones, grade papers, or work on the computer during testing. You may encourage students to continue working or to review their work. It is allowable to remind the class to make sure they are on the right section of the test and item on the answer sheet. This should not be interpreted as pointing out to a specific student he or she is answering the wrong question on the answer sheet. The test administrator cannot give advice nor give any interpretation regarding specific items on the FSA. Test administrators are required to maintain an accurate seating chart for each tested group of students. If a student does ask a question about the FSA beyond general directions regarding taking the test or about a specific test item, the test administrator is only allowed to give general encouragement. For example, do the best you can. If a student insists that an item is incorrect, has no correct or 2 correct answers, the test administrator should inform the school test coordinator so that this may be noted on the school coordinator comment form. You may assure the student that if there is actually an error, the item will not be counted. This brings us to an often asked question. What kind of responses are teachers allowed to give a student if he or she asks about an FSA item? The FSA administration manuals describe test security policies and procedures. One of the prohibited activities is reading the passages or test items before, during, or after testing. Therefore, except for specific accommodations for certain ESC students, no teacher or school administrator is allowed to read any FSA items. Students taking retakes and end-of-course assessments may receive additional time to complete the test. This should not be interpreted that students have unlimited time. They must be applying themselves to finishing the test. During the test, make sure that students clear their desks except for the appropriate test materials. Students should use only number 2 pencils. The students may not use books, notes, or scratch paper and must not talk or make any disturbance as he or she works independently. The test materials allowed by grade can be found in the administration manual. Note, for certain grades, students do not have access to calculators, reference sheets, and folders. Science reference sheets are not provided for grade 5. Math reference sheets are provided at grades 5 through 8 and for retakes. A periodic table of elements are provided for grade 8 science. Test books may not be returned to students after they have been collected. Test items are not to be discussed with students even after the test has been collected and materials have been returned. Any missing materials or test irregularities must be communicated with the school test coordinator as soon as possible. A test irregularity is a departure from the standardized testing procedures outlined by the FSA or end-of-course test administration manuals. For example, allotting too much or too little time to take a test, or administering a section out of order. The purpose of any test invalidation is to identify when the validity of the test has been compromised. The decision is made only after discussion with the district director of testing. A test must be invalidated under any of the following circumstances. A student has an electronic device during the test, or the student is cheating. During the testing session, a test may be invalidated under the following circumstances. A student becomes ill and is unable to finish the test. The student is allowed an incorrect amount of time. A student is not given the proper accommodation on his or her IEP. A student is disruptive during testing. A student works in the wrong section, or an error occurs in the test administration that could compromise the validity of the test. There is a very strict policy concerning the possession of electronic devices during the FSA or EOC testing sessions. The FSA Administration Manual states if a student is found to be in possession of any electronic devices during testing or during a testing break, he or she must have their test invalidated. Students and parents and guardians must be made aware of this policy prior to testing. By during testing, we mean any time after an FSA book has been distributed to any students, including a break within the session. If an electronic device is found within a student's possession during testing, but this fact was not discovered until after the session has ended, this is still cause for an invalidation. Electronic device is defined as any item that can receive, transmit, record, and calculate, except for the approved 4-function calculator. The best way for students to avoid having electronic devices in their possession is to collect them prior to the test session and put them in the front of the room and to adequately proctor the entire test. It would be best to practice these procedures during the official FSA practice sessions. To set a consistent example for our students, test administrators should not use electronic devices during the FSA test sessions. The state of Florida has contracted with a company called Pavion. This company is charged with the task of analyzing student test results to identify extremely unusual answer patterns with the potential of an unfair advantage in taking a test. The 3 types of unusual answer patterns include identifying very high similarity among pairs or groups of test takers, very unusual numbers of erasures, particularly wrong to right, and very substantial gains or losses from one test to another. The state feels that possible causes of extremely high similarity of responses are answer copying, test coaching, proxy test taking, and/or collusion. Therefore, when student responses are identified as having a very high similarity of answers, 1 in a trillion, the student's results will be withheld awaiting an investigation by the district. This investigation should include all test administrators and students involved. No student-level scores will be withheld based on erasure analysis or gains analysis. However, a flag school will lead the district to review. This could mean that a school's grade will be withheld waiting this review. To conclude with some common problems. 1. Please make sure all scripts are read verbatim. 2. Correct and complete script for administering found in the FSA EOC test administration manuals. For FSA reading, mathematics, including EOC and science, the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards Administration of FCAT and Algebra 1, the best way to avoid mistakes is a review of the manuals prior to test dates. Perhaps the most common mistake during the FSA has been for a student to inappropriately go from one test session to another. They do this by ignoring the stop sign visible at the bottom of the designated pages. Calculators can only be used for the FSA Math and Science at grades 7 through 12. If it is used by students at other grade levels or during sessions that are not appropriate, it is reason for invalidation. Student tests will not be scored. Lastly, the security of all test materials must be maintained before, during, and after test administrations. If any secure test materials cannot be accounted for, after an initial search, please inform your school test coordinator as soon as possible. This is the essential information Leon County Schools want to share with you regarding all FSA and end-of-course test administrations. Other important information is shared during your school's official FSA training. Have a good day, and good luck during the FSA.